Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Happy Tuesday. It's Tuesday. It is raining outside, which I know for some of you, you're like, ew, no, cringe. Well, we don't get a lot of rain out here, so I'm happy. So, anyways, day number 7 of self-love. And today's a good one. Today is really, really a good one. And I it's going to be a tough one for some people. So, excuse me. Forgive yourself. See, my whole brain is just like, no. Sorry. All right. So again, as usual, I'm going to read this. We're going to talk about it, and then I'll read it, and then we'll close out. Okay. So again, forgive yourself. Do you recall the one or maybe a few times you did something that left you feeling regrettable, humiliated, or ashamed? Time to let go of that. Really? Already? Although you can't change the things you've done in the past, you can influence what happens in the future. Consider it a teaching moment and believe in your capacity to change. Give yourself the same grace that you would extend to someone else if they were going through this. So, um, accountability is a huge thing. If you are struggling with trauma, if you are struggling with, a healing journey regarding trauma and coming through trauma and all that stuff, not just stuff, but you know what I mean. It can be a little difficult. It can be a little difficult. It can be harrowing. It can be hair raising. It can be downright, incredibly, absolutely awful. So you're sitting here probably saying, Shelly Marie, if that's the case, why are you trying to help us with self love? And why are you telling us to go through this healing journey? Because when you come through the other side, that's where the rainbows and sunshine and all that stuff is. I mean, there's still going to be bad days, okay? And there still might be triggers left over. But, whether you've gone through trauma or not, we do have those moments of regrettable, humiliating, shameful, reactions to things, right? Where we probably could have done better, and it will sit with us for days. We'll overthink it, and we'll make it much bigger than it probably was to begin with. I read this really interesting meme yesterday, and I didn't fact check it yet, but it did come from a site that was talking about like psychology and stuff like that. So I'll give it some credit. Okay. You can fact check it yourself, but I actually tend to believe this because it's probably very, very true. Um, and I say that in the sense that having gone back and looked over my own emotions, they don't last that long. But what lasts long is what I feed into them. So, what the meme said was that an emotion lasts about 90 seconds. Okay. And then, so like if you're angry, if you're sad, if you're upset, it's usually about 90 seconds. That's the average. Now, for a lot of us, it may go longer than that, but it doesn't last much longer than the initial moment, right? But it's what we start getting mad about. How all of a sudden you're bringing things up from 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 3 years ago that have nothing to do with what's going on now. And that can be trauma because you're feeding into this now. You're feeding into this emotion because suddenly you've unleashed this emotion, and for myself personally, that felt like permission to just unload everything, right? It's like somebody left the gates open for 90 seconds and I'm going to ride through it for about 24 to 48 to 97 hours, right? Well, 48, 96, 72, 96. All right, my brain. This is my brain today, all right? So, you know how it is. My brain just like fireworks goes in every direction. So, but anyways, that being said, this can be the same reason why we struggle so hard to forgive ourselves, right? Because we're constantly feeding into this thing. A long time ago, like almost 20 years ago, older sibling had neck surgery, and an event happened where I was just ashamed for so long, and I hadn't really. I'd had probably 2 failed rounds of therapy, at that time. The first doctor I loved, but his office was so far away. I never really went back. I kind of got the answer I thought I needed. Then I tried therapy again, and that doctor just felt like he was phoning it in, or it could be that I just wasn't ready yet. I don't know. I don't know. Um, but whatever it is, I know I still had a lot of trauma and a lot of anger happening inside of me. And there was a situation we were in where the help that we had brought in just was not help at all. So I was working and doing double duty to help sibling. And I got to a point where it was just bad. And, we had a little of a tiff. And, I just, the actions I took that day were just uh, reprehensible. And she laughs about it. She thinks it's hilarious, and I was just so embarrassed. And instead of taking her nod at it, because I mean, I don't know if it was because she was trying to make me feel better, or she just thought it was funny, or it was just kind of like, wow, or it just caught her so off guard. But older sibling will always put people before her. She could be down to her last shirt and she'll still give it to somebody. And no, I'm not just saying that because she's older sibling. I'm saying that because if you ask anybody that knows her, they will all tell you the same thing. She's just an amazingly incredible human. And yeah, so for years, and I think I've talked about it on the show before, what happened. I'm not going to go into it today because I want people to focus on the forgiveness part. It took me years to forgive myself for that, and it wasn't anything life threatening. It wasn't anything super bad. Like I said, I mean, she just kind of looked at me in shock, and then she, she just, like, not even a month later, she was kind of laughing about it. And I just couldn't. It was too soon. And like 10 years was still too soon to talk about it. But after I got therapy, I started to see, and I started to understand that, when I talked about it the other day, how I ended up in therapy the first time. And, because I was punching walls and I didn't know why. Just walking through the hallway and bam, it's like this anger just came out of me. And that's what was happening. This anger was coming out of me, and it was unchecked, very unchecked. But there's a lot of other behaviors, like like I said, with that 90-second window, right? It's all of a sudden you have permission to unload everything that's been bothering you, but you've been stuffing it down. Some people, I guess, are good at stuffing things down. I think physically it's gonna, come out, because you really, it's an emotion, and emotions, in my personal opinion, can upend you. I really do feel like if you have unchecked emotions, it can make you ill because you're holding in a lot of stress. You're holding in a lot of pain, you're holding in a lot of anger, and you're just, you're stifling it. You're just shutting it down and shoving it down as far as it will go. And that doesn't always work out well. It's going to come out in a vomitory of words, or vomitory. That's the place where you go, right? It's going to come out in a vomit of words, right? It's just like verbal sewage, and you can't take it back. You can apologize until the cows come home, but ultimately you cannot take it back. And because of that, a lot of times we will carry that on top of everything else we're going through. And that's why forgiveness is so important. We can ask for forgiveness from other people, and I am sure the majority of the time they will give it. You may have to do a little more work before you get it. And that could just be, the amount of pain that you caused. And I've been, like I said, I've been very lucky. Sibling has been very understanding. She knew what I was going through before I understood what I was going through. And that's why she never gave up on me. Her and I talked about this the other night. And I'm all like, I said, I have no idea where I'd be without you. Like I said, I tell her this every so often. I have no idea where I'd be if you hadn't been patient with me and got me the help I needed, or encouraged me to get the help I needed. Now, not everyone's going to need professional help. All right. I mean, you may have like I said, what I call common people blues. To me, common people blues is situational. You're going to have depression over certain things. You're going to have grief if you lose something or someone or a job. It's not just death. Grief doesn't just come with death. Grief comes with a lot of different things, but it can be situational. Maybe you're lonely, maybe you're sad, but then friends come over, they perk you up, and it's like, hey, you're back to yourself. But with people like me who have addictive mental health, sometimes that's a little bit harder, you can have your friends come over and it's a struggle. So, um, and for people who say chemical imbalances aren't real, well, I got news for you. Okay, they are. So, but we do our best every day, right? I mean, today's a good day for me. I'm smiling, I'm cheery, I'm happy, and I have learned to just kind of do my best to stay in the present moment so that I don't worry about the next one. All right, it's still a work in progress. But the reason you know, I'm talking about all these other things is because, I talked about the other day how, there are behaviors that I've had in my past that were, again, what was it? Regrettable, humiliating, or a shame or shameful, right? And and we can tear ourselves down, or we can make amends for those things and, you know, learn from them. Every time we lose our shit, it's a teachable moment. Whether you have every right to lose your ever loving mind. Because sometimes you are going to be in those situations where you're just like, whoa, what the hell? And those are probably the moments where you get angry and you don't feel bad about it. Because, it's kind of like, you're seeing things that, excuse me, you're seeing things happening, you're watching your world or the world around you fall apart, and just like, oh my God. But when it's aimed at somebody, that's when it becomes a bit of a problem, right? That's when it becomes that regrettable, shameful action. So, like I said, in the past, I have had these, and this is why I talk about them, because I found a way to move past them. And the way I found was I had to learn to forgive myself. I had to learn that a lot of my responses and a lot of my, reactions to things that did become regrettable were caused from somewhere. And when I started to really understand where they were coming from, the first thing I wanted to do was I need to heal this. I need to heal this. And it's, every so often it still happens. I still kind of like, but my recovery time is so much better. Or a lot of times I just feel it coming. And it's like, you know what? I need to go before I say something I don't mean, because I can sometimes feel it. And sometimes it just comes up for no reason. And that's when I know. It's like I take a drive, I'll take a walk, I'll put on some really loud music, and no matter what I do before I go to bed, I journal it out. Now, I know you're like, oh God, here she is with her journal again. I cannot tell you how much journaling is good for you. All right. I am a journal aficionado. I don't want to use the other word because, I do in my posts because it's kind of funny, but people will probably be like, oh my God. So, don't want to offend. But yeah, I am a collector of journals and pens. And in fact, I have one, two, three, four. I have four sitting right here, plus these little notebooks. I know, and they all have a different purpose. I mean, one was one I started. The one I'm in now is because the other one ran out. And the third one, two of them, baby sibling gave me, one for Christmas, one for my birthday, and the other one I'm using as kind of story prompts. So, because I love to write, but journals, I will also say, besides older sibling and my very understanding and cooperative family and friends, saved my life. It absolutely saved my life. And I think to have something around you is important. And people say, well, Shelly Marie, they're expensive. You get yours as gifts. And sometimes I buy my own. I know, sometimes I buy my own. But you know what? There are times when I just buy my own. I got this one. I'm going to show you right now. I got this one from a dollar store. Okay. And yeah, I mean, I just went in there to take a peek and I found this and I loved it. And it was like $1.25. Yeah, and look, it's got paper and lines. A journal doesn't matter. You can have something like this. You can use your phone. The phones have journal apps for, now. I mean, the iPhone comes with its own journal app now. I actually use that when I'm laying in bed because I try not to keep my phone near me. But right now, where I'm at, my phone is just my bed is next to my desk. So sometimes when I know I need to journal about something, or I have, I need to talk about something. It just sometimes it hits my head because it's, bedtime. My brain is still a little active, but not as active. And I'll just write down my prompt, and then the next day I'll go into my other journal, my actual journal, which is this one. This is the one I got for my birthday from baby sibling, and I'll just write. But when I talk about stuff like this is some I bought this to journal in, and then baby sibling gave me the other journal, and I thought, oh well, I love this one, but I'm gonna I'm gonna stick with the one that she gave me. So it doesn't matter. You can get a bunch of loose leaf paper and a binder if you want. These are your personal thoughts. These are your things. But it's also a way to figure out how to forgive yourself. It's, to write down today, today I lost my ever loving mind and I don't know why, and is there something troubling me? Maybe you had a bad day at work, right? And you come home and you take it out on everybody else and you don't realize it's because you had a bad day at work, because sometimes, you might have those and it's just kind of like, and then you hold it down because you really can't do anything about it. Um, you can probably go to HR, but in my experience, it didn't work out. Um, but I'm not discouraging people. If you have a problem, go to HR. If HR ain't going to help you, you go higher. All right. Older sibling always tells me, go higher. I didn't go higher, and HR really let me down when I worked at the bank. So, and no, I'm not afraid of talking about that because I really, really did. They were kind of the beginning of my end. So, but I encourage you to go to HR if you have those problems, okay? Because you don't need to take on somebody else's issues and then bring it home and then need something to forgive yourself for, right? So I know I'm all over the board on this one. And I told you this was going to be a hard subject, but I think the reason I'm all over the board is because there's so many things that happen during the day that, we might just kind of stuff down without thinking about it. And then it comes out later on somebody else that had nothing to do with it, or, had, zero ties to that moment. And then we feel like, oh my God, what did I just do? And so then you feel like you got to, do the apology tour. And I've done my apology tour. I'm not going to lie. Um, there's a lot of things that I've done in my life. I mean, mostly just when I lose my mind, and I just lash out. And that's mostly what it is. It's mostly when I've lashed out. And, you know, uh, I would always take it out on my family or my friends. When I was dating, I didn't exactly have the exemplary relationships that you want. And I was just always so afraid of upsetting them that I would kind of take it out on other people when I was upset, when I was hurting, and when I was just, instead of asking for someone to listen, I didn't know how to ask. And maybe that's where I'm trying to go with this. A lot of times, in order to forgive ourselves, we have to be open and unafraid of asking for help. It doesn't, you're probably saying, oh, here she goes again with her professional help. If you need professional help, get professional help. I can't force you to do anything. But what I can tell you is very, very helpful is when you have that close friend, when you have that person that you can turn to, that will listen, that will just listen unconditionally and not judge you, so that you don't hold all this crap in, so that you don't hold all this anxiety and this pain and this sadness and this anger in, so that it does lash out at somebody. Because my mom always told me, she's like, you really need to watch it because you don't know, one day you may just lash out at, or, you may just, get mad at the wrong person. And she's not wrong. She wasn't wrong. And, fortunately for me, knock on wood, it never happened. But there was a lot of unchecked anger for a long, long time. And that unchecked anger led to the Shelley Marie Lucas apology tour. And that was in itself a bit humiliating, because not because, I was apologizing, but because I had put myself in this position and I remembered some of the things that I'd said and some of the things that I'd done. And it was just like, oh my God. I've often talked about how Sissy and I, not sibling, but Sissy and I, Sissy passed away 10 years ago this summer, how we would fight a lot. She had unchecked trauma, and her and I would talk about it a lot. And I didn't understand it back then because I hadn't I hadn't realized I had it either. But boy, we could get into some good fights. She would have something pressing on her, and she would say something, and I always say that I didn't start 99.9% of those fights, but boy, I sure didn't end them either. And then we would just go at it until we're both just kind of exhausted. And sometimes it led to months of not talking to each other. And those are months that I regret now, because had I listened to older sibling and gotten the help I needed a lot sooner, you know, um, maybe maybe we would have had better times before, and a lot more, you know, a lot less come to Jesus moments, I should say, before she passed. But I can't do anything about that now. And that's probably something I should journal about and forgive myself for, because that's probably something that's been weighing on me that I didn't realize. So, long story short, if you feel like you've done something, if you feel like you need to apologize for it. And I don't mean one of these things where it's like someone says something, okay, I'm sorry. If you're going to apologize, apologies are a promise that you are going to change the behavior. Don't just throw sorries around like you're a millionaire with, single, like dollar bills, just tossing them in every direction, right? Just apologies. And I get it. Some people are very non-confrontational. A lot of people are very non-confrontational, and they're going to say sorry because they think that's what you want to hear. But sorry works when it comes with a changed behavior. And I was one of those people that would say, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I'm not even sure if I meant it half the time, but I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to argue. And I certainly did not want anyone to be angry with me, right? Because I'm a recovering people pleaser. And, if someone's mad at you, that means you're not pleasing these people. And so I needed to find a way to just kind of nip it in the bud. So it was always like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And then I read an article, and I realized, and even my mom's, oh, well, sorry doesn't mean anything if you don't change. And that was true. you know um and I realized that a lot of things that I said sorry for, I didn't change the behavior. I mean, I was sorry in that moment, but I didn't realize how much more to it there was. It was just kind of like, well, I'm sorry. And so eventually I did learn to forgive myself. I mean, sometimes it takes a little while for me to get there, but I also realized that I can't change, what's been done. And so I have to remind myself that, we all deserve compassion, grace, and empathy. So it's just like it says on here. I'm going to read this through and let's talk about it. So, do you recall the one or maybe a few times you did something that left you feeling regrettable, humiliated, or ashamed? Time to let go of that. Although you can't change the things you've done in the past, you can influence what happens in the future. By learning how to forgive yourself, you can change this behavior. I had to come to terms with the fact that I thought it was in control of emotions that I absolutely was not in control of. My trauma had taken over my life. And because of that, it would lash out at people when it felt like it, because it was too much for me to hold down. I'm not a person that can stuff things down. I have to deal with it in the moment. I truly believe nobody is, but there are some people that are just better at it than others. And, but, I'm not one of those people. Again, I talked about it the other day. It's like Mount Vesuvius, right? It's like you stuff, stuff, stuff. The pressure builds up and poof, it explodes. And I realized that once I learned to forgive myself, and once I learned to take responsibility for these actions and what I believed was causing it, and learn how to heal that, it actually became a lot less. And I became a lot more aware of, when the anger is rising. I've become a lot more aware of when I'm feeling tense or upset. and to know when to walk away and to know when to just go off and cool off, because those emotions are just, again, those 90-second emotions, right? If you feed it, it's going to get worse. But if you take a really good look at it, ask yourself why, what is happening, what is in this moment, and either think about it, walk it off, or journal it, or all three, you know, then you'll be able to nip it in the bud for the future, right? Because we can't control what just happened, but we can control what happens in the future. So consider it a teaching moment and believe in your capacity to change. Everybody can change. Nobody wants to change who you are. But what we want to change is how we react to things, our responses to things. Am I responding the way I should be responding, or am I responding in anger that's going to cause me to have to do a forgiveness tour? And it's a lot easier to just catch yourself in that moment than to plan the apology tour, because you don't know who you're going to hurt, and you don't know that they're going to forgive you, because you may say something so absolutely horrible that you absolutely do not mean, and they're going to take it to heart because they don't know that you don't mean it. And then you might try to convince yourself that or might try to convince them that you didn't mean it, but you said it and you can't take it back. Words hurt. You can't, as sibling always says, you can't unring a bell. You cannot unring a bell. So again, give yourself the same grace that you would give to someone else if they were, going through this. So if you know somebody and you're like, hey, I've been there, I've done that, and you're giving them the listening time, the understanding, the compassion, the grace, the empathy, give that to yourself as well. That's how you heal. You give yourself that compassion, that empathy, that grace. You figure out how to, you know, work through it so that it doesn't happen again. And I'm not saying you're never going to get mad again in your entire life. We're human. You're going to hear that a lot during self-love, because I think a lot of people equate self-love with perfection and, being this, angelic being with like wings coming out of your back, and I mean, hey, I love angels. Like I said, I've got 4 of them tattooed onto me. But you know what? We're not perfect. I mean, for the most part, they're not either. I know. Watch out for that lightning, Shelly Marie. But but no, we're not perfect. We're not perfect. We're human. And the human experience is to learn and to grow and to change the behaviors we want to change. Changing your behaviors doesn't change you. It really, in a way, broadens your horizons. It awakens you to this person that might have been hiding under all this anger and all this sadness and all this pain, or the grief you may feel from losing something that was very, very important to you, or someone that was very, very important to you. All these things can lead up to the pain that causes us to lash out. So we really want to work on that. And doing that means forgiving ourselves and giving ourselves, once again, that compassion, that grace, that empathy, and that understanding. And then saying, you know what, this is the behavior, and I need to heal it so that it doesn't happen again, or so that, I minimize the amount of times it happens. All right. So it's a work in progress. It's not something you can just do. I mean, maybe some people can, so I guess I shouldn't say you can't just, but it is a work in progress, because it is also something where you have to be aware of your behaviors, So I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so, so much for watching. Tomorrow will be a good one. Tomorrow's Self-Care Wednesday. So check in with yourself emotionally. You know what? That'll be a good one for tomorrow. So remember that today. Forgive yourself. But tomorrow is checking with yourself emotionally. And that's going to kind of tie into a lot of the things that we've already talked about in the first 7 days of self-love. All right. So I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so, so much for watching. I'll be back here tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, Facebook Live. All lives are public. Anybody can watch. You can also catch the replay on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. So they're all under Shelly Marie Lucas somewhere, or under GoalieFan1973. Twitter is Shellbell's Quest, and because Shellbell's Quest is to help people with their mental health. And my YouTube channel is the Aloha Perspective, and that is also what Instagram and TikTok are. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you so, so much again for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.